Okay, here we are getting our daily fuel, formerly Bible and Daily Life. By the middle of the year, we'll be calling it our daily fuel as we make the transition over because we need fuel. We need fuel for today. We need fuel for our spiritual life. In our spiritual life, when that's in line, then our emotional life and our relational life and our vocational life and our psychological life and our sexual life and all of those things will come together. So we need some fuel so we can get our spiritual life together. And a little bit of the New Testament every day is going to help us do that. And just a little bit a day is going to get us through the whole New Testament by the end of the year. So we are in Matthew. Matthew is the Jewish gospel. The gospel is good news. This is the good news to the Jewish people of the first century. Matthew himself, he was a converted Jew. Not all of the gospel writers were converted Jews. Luke was a Greek. He was a Gentile. Matthew is writing specifically to the Jewish people so that they can know that Jesus is the Messiah, so that they can put their hope and their trust in him, the one that they've been looking for all along, according to the prophecies of the Old Testament. He's the fulfillment of all of those things. So here we go, chapter 2 of Matthew. And we're going to look at growing up with Jesus, which is a strange concept, right? Growing up with Jesus, watching him be born, and then see what it was like to be in his family. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem, important if you're Jewish, that's the city of David. He was a descendant of David. That was very important to them in the genealogy, that he would come from that family tree. Bethlehem means house of bread. Jesus said, I'm the bread from heaven. So after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, again, for the Jewish people, Judea, explaining where he was from, during the time of King Herod, King Herod, he's awful. He's a Roman ruler. And this is very important as we go through the New Testament, that what was happening in Rome in the day, that Rome had started out as a republic, and the Greeks talking about democracy, and the Romans moving it into a republic, representative government. That's starting to change now in Rome. The power of the Senate is declining, and the power of the emperor is increasing. And it's going to increase so much so that the power of the Senate will be just about zero. They'll just be able to be loudmouths maybe. But the emperors are taking more and more power to themselves. So much so that they're ultimately going to see themselves as gods in the sole rulers. And so if there's any competitive king in Rome, heads off. There can be no competitive kings. Now, King Herod is particularly jealous of being a king. He was violent towards his own family because he thought they were going to try to take his throne. They said it was better to be Herod's pig than to be a member of his family, because he would kill you if he thought you were going to try to take his throne away from him. So, very jealous man. Well, during the time of King Herod, excuse me, these magi came from the east to Jerusalem. The east of Jerusalem, where are they coming from? Iraq, Iran. Modern day Iraq, Iran, Persia, Babylon. And they asked, where is the king of the Jews? Where is he supposed to be born? We saw his star and we've come to worship him. Well, King Herod, they're asking the wrong person, they should be asking the theologians. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. Right, because he doesn't want any rival king. When he called together all of the people, the chief priests and the teachers of the law, let's call a council meeting, he asked them where the Messiah was going to be born. And they said, in Bethlehem in Judea, they replied, for this is what the prophet has written. Again, this is important to the Jewish people, that he is the fulfillment of all of the prophecies. In this particular one from Micah chapter 5, which becomes a Christmas verse that you kind of hear a lot around Christmas time. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. So although it's an insignificant town, it's very significant because this is where the Messiah comes from. There's a big lesson there, right, about significance. And just like we saw in chapter 1, if you were with us. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Prophecy about Jesus coming from Bethlehem. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time that the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, and he said, go search carefully for this child, for this king, this rival king. And as soon as you find him, report to me so I may go and worship him also. Well, he was going to worship a different way. He was going to worship with a sword and cut off the head of even a little baby because he was afraid of rival kings, did not want a rival king, a very jealous man. After they heard the king, they went on their way, and the star that they had seen when it arose ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Well, who were these guys? I think that these magi were the wise men, the astrologers, the soothsayers, the fortune tellers, that in the book of Daniel, Daniel, who keeps his faith and stays faithful to God, is made the ruler over all of these fortune tellers, all of these new agers, all of these astrologers, and he's over all of them. I think he teaches them the scripture and teaches them the prophecies and teaches them to look for the Messiah. Now, this is sort of an affront to the Jewish community because these guys are looking for the Messiah and they're Gentiles. So the Jews weren't looking for the Messiah, but the Gentiles come looking. And so this is, Matthew, this is a little bit of a poke in the eye, really, when Matthew is saying, look at the heathen, the Gentiles were looking for him, but you weren't. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. And coming to the house, they saw the child with the mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Wow. They opened treasures, gifts of gold, incense, and myrrh. Of course, gold for king, frankincense for prayers going up to heaven, myrrh for burial. And so, having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Well, Herod didn't like this. So now we get into the life of Jesus a little bit, right? When the angel had gone, and the angel appeared to Joseph in a dream, and he said, get the child and the mother and escape to Egypt. Stay here until I tell you, for Herod's going to search for the child to kill him. So one of the things that happens around the birth of Jesus, growing up with Jesus, is all of a sudden there's supernatural activity. There'd been a cease of supernatural activity for about 400 years, and now there's a plethora of it. It's happening everywhere. Angels and prophecies and miracles. So in verse 14, so they got up, they took the child and his mother in the night, and they left Egypt. So Jesus is born in an environment of the supernatural, but he's also born in an environment of persecution and violence and hostility. You can have both at the same time, right? Supernatural, but persecution, violence, and hostility. And then he was also born in an environment of, verse 14, obedience, because Joseph obeyed the word of God. Verse 15, where he stayed until the death of Herod, and it was fulfilled what the Lord had said for the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. So there we have another prophecy, the prophecy coming from Hosea. And also this family is a family that's on the move. They're a very poor family. We'll see that in a moment, tomorrow actually. So, but they're a family that's on the move. They're a family that's on the move. When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious. He's a furious man anyway. And he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity, 2 years and under, in accordance with the time he learned from the Magi. So he's going to make sure he gets rid of that baby. He's going to make sure there's no rival king. Well, Jesus cannot be stopped. He's going to be the Messiah. He's going to come. Herod can't stop him. There's a lesson there. God's in control of everything. He's in control of history. And then that which was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. So here's another prophecy. See, this is the Jewish gospel. This is, again, coming from Jeremiah 31. A lot of people like that prophecy in Jeremiah 31. But he says that this is what the prophet said, was a voice is heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning. Rachel's weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they're no more. Well, chapter 29, that's where the verse is, where it says, and I know the plans that I have for you, plans for your good, and not plans for your harm, and plans for your future. Well, this one's pretty rough. That Jeremiah said that this king would go after all of the babies, and he did. Verse 19. Again, it's a time of weeping. It's a time of distress. What environment did Jesus grow up in? A supernatural environment of violence, hostility, persecution, godly environment at the same time, a family on the move. There's weeping and there's distress and there's great sorrow. Verse 19, after Herod had died, the angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph and said, get up and with the mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead. So persecutions, trials, difficulties do come to an end. Sometimes it's a long time. And they took the child and the mother, and they went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in the place of Judah instead of his father, he was afraid to go there. He was warned in a dream. He goes to Galilee, and he lived in a town called Nazareth. Another prophecy fulfilled. So was fulfilled that which was through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. So there you go. There you go. He grew up ordinary. He grew up ordinary in Nazareth. And so we'll continue going on looking at this, but some great lessons, right? Jesus grew up in an environment of the supernatural. So we're living in supernatural environments, you know, walking with God doing supernatural things, but there's persecution, there's violence, there's hostility, there's people who are against us. But there was godly people, Joseph and Mary, godly and obedient and listening to God and following God. They're on the move. They're on the move. And there's weeping and there's sorrow and distress and there's ordinary life. There's ordinary life. But we find God in all of those things, including the ordinary life. So be with us today, Lord, in our ordinary lives. God bless you guys. Love you.